You sunk my battleship. A simple four-word phrase, but one that, to many, probably calls to mind warm memories of dozens of fun game nights from their childhood, and maybe even beyond. Battleship, a strategy/guessing game involving trying to symbolically sink small models of an opponent's naval fleet, arranged on a grid obscured from your vision, and with each hit represented by small plastic pegs, has long been one of the most popular board games around. Its simple but satisfying gameplay helping it remain relevant even as the board game market has increasingly shifted towards much more elaborate and complex games of strategy. That it has so effectively stood the test of time should be no surprise. In fact, it's been doing so far longer than many fans may realize. Though the first commercial version of the tabletop edition of Battleship most of us are familiar with, from the Massachusetts-founded game company Milton Bradley, was first released in 1967, the game's history actually stretches back much further, with some game historians tying its origins to the early 20th century success of the French game L'Attaque, better known to modern gamers as Stratego, and others suggesting its inspiration may lay even further in the past, with an 1890 board game called Basilinda, which saw players each arrange game pieces representing soldiers and cannons on one side of a removable partition board, only for the board to then be pulled away, showing which soldiers were in the unfortunate range of their opponent's cannons. Whether it was Stratego or Basilinda that inspired it, the first recognizable version of the game as we know it today was released in 1931 by the Starix Company. This version was called Salvo, and was played by marking both your fleet and attacks on your opponent on pre-printed pads of paper containing the grid. This paper-based gameplay would continue throughout the 30s and 40s, with later versions such as the Strathmore Company's Combat, the Battleship game, Maurice L. Friedman's Warfare Naval Combat, and even Milton Bradley's first go-around with the idea, then called Broadsides, a game of naval strategy. But it was Milton Bradley's 1967 innovation to ditch the paper pads and release it as a plastic tabletop game that really cemented it in gaming culture, perhaps also somewhat due to the smart decision to shorten the name to simply Battleship. This version was an immediate success, and only 10 years later, in 1977, Milton Bradley would keep the popularity going with the release of the computerized electronic Battleship, adding lights and sound effects to the gameplay. Hasbro would acquire and absorb Milton Bradley in 1984, and it's safe to say they were quite happy to have Battleship under their umbrella, as the game has remained a consistent seller in the board game world. Perhaps not surprisingly, Battleship has also proven to be one of the board games most adaptable to the video game world, with numerous versions released for various systems, both as standalone games on their own and included as mini-games in games like 2008's Hasbro Family Game Night for the PlayStation 2. So what has been the secret to the game's enduring popularity? Well, it's hard to deny the satisfaction of hearing those four magic words when you take out your opponent's battleship, or the even larger satisfaction of wiping out their entire fleet and winning the game. And while games like Monopoly or Stratego are equally eternal, their more complex rules and possibility of long, drawn-out gameplay are also a stark contrast to Battleship, which is genius in its simplicity. There are no elaborate rules to memorize, no technicalities that need to be remembered. Heck, there's not even really a story, which you would think would mean it also wouldn't lend itself to narrative-driven adaptations. But then, that's never stopped Hollywood before, not when there's potential money to be made. The year is 2012, and Universal Pictures, working with Hasbro Studios, are ready to try to turn one of the most popular board games of all time into the next big Hollywood franchise, with Battleship. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris.
You got nothing? Nothing this time?
I mean, bloop.
That'll do. That'll do.
Do you remember that? That GIF or that meme from years ago? Remember Titanic? And then it was like, this ship can't sink, and then just immediately cut to it sinking, and it goes bloop.
I thought the bloop sound was the sound of the souls of all the Universal execs watching the numbers come in on this one.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, that works as well.
I don't know. I think this is a fun one to talk about today. We are returning to the land of Taylor Kitsch, star of our first episode, John Carter. And in fact, we mentioned this during that episode, but the crazy thing about, that was John Carter was meant to be his big move from TV land to movie stardom. Mm-hmm. And obviously we know it didn't work out, which is why it was the first movie we covered on Favorite Franchise. But the even stranger thing is that there was a second attempt that same year. Mm-hmm. And later that summer, in 2012, we got the movie that we're talking about today, Battleship.
Yes, directed by Peter Berg, written by John Hober, Eric Hober, the Hober brothers. The budget was $220 million. Domestic haul was 60. Haul like a ship. Was 65.4 million, and then worldwide it brought in just over 300 million. So not great. If maybe they spent a little bit less money, that would be okay. But oh boy, $220 million.
Yeah, this wasn't a John Carter-esque disaster. But it was enough of a bomb that it was a real sore 1-2 punch for Taylor Kitsch that year. And I mean, we'll get back to this later. I still feel bad for the guy, because I don't think either of these can really be held, on his shoulders. And yet that's kind of the way the general populace looks at it. And unfortunately, that's the way Hollywood looks at it. And we know that he's never really been given another shot at this kind of stardom again. But I don't know. I'll have more to say about Taylor Kitsch as we go on. But would you agree? Do you think there's no sense of giving him all the blame for both these films being, such big bombs?
I actually think you can give him some blame on this one, actually.
All right. Well, we'll save that for the review. Yeah. This is kind of, I don't know if this is going to be one of the more popular movies we were talking about by any means, or one of the more infamous movies, but I think this is kind of the perfect film to talk about for this show. Mm-hmm. Because it symbolizes so much of what's stupid about Hollywood. Yeah. And what I mean is we need to talk about the basic, backstory of this movie. And in fact, the ultimate joke that revolved around this movie, and why I remember, in seeing this film in 2012, I will actually tell my little origin story here with this film, in that this was not a movie I ever intended to see, because like many sensible people, I was like, get the fuck out of here with their movie based on Battleship. Based on the board game, the game that is just you throw, trying to get pegs into your friends' ships and saying you sunk my battleship. That's not going to be a movie. Come on. Yeah. And I just thought it sounded so stupid. And the only reason I ended up seeing it is at this time I was actually writing for a website online doing movie reviews, and so I had press access, and I was invited to press screenings occasionally. And this was a press screening I was invited to. And I was like, yeah, okay, for free, I'll go check it out. So that's how I ended up seeing Battleship. And I'll talk about my feelings of it later, but that's why I saw this film. But I think that attitude I had was kind of the general attitude of, most of the public. Why are they making a movie of Battleship? Yeah. And that's ultimately what I have to look at, because actually I don't want to say complicated, but there's a pretty big backstory to that. And it all comes down to this crazy deal that was signed between Universal and Hasbro. So Hasbro, as most people know, is a game and toy company. And around 2000, they got a new CEO named Brian Goldner. Brian Goldner is on record as saying he kind of came in with this notion of revitalizing Hasbro. He says, when I came on board in 2000, the company was severely financially challenged. Some of the rights to our brands and movies were out there. My goal was to get back a lot of those rights, re-engage with creative stewards, and do it in a different manner, not to make deals, but to make movies. Mm-hmm. So he came in with this real idea that, okay, yes, we're a toy and movie company, but movies, that's where the money is. And he gets off to a pretty good start, because the first thing he does is creates the Transformers franchise. Right. Which, Chris, is your favorite thing in the world, because you have very low standards.
I've never loved anything more.
Yeah. But the Transformers franchise is huge, right? So
You're
right
welcome.
off the bat, it's But right off the bat, it seems like he gets some clout, and someone's like, "Oh, okay, maybe there's something to this idea." And then they start to get a little cocky. And in 2008, they strike a big deal with Universal. And I want to read you. I'm gonna read you the actual press release, or at least some of it, not the entire thing.
Yep.
This was the press release that was put out on February 20th, 2008. Today, Universal Pictures and Hasbro Inc. have announced that they have formed a 6-year strategic partnership to produce at least 4 motion pictures based on some of the world's best-known and beloved brands, including Monopoly, Candyland, Clue, Ouija, Battleship, Magic the Gathering, and Stretch Armstrong. The announcement was jointly made by Mark Schmugger and David Lind, chairman and co-chairman of Universal Pictures, and Brian Goldner, Hasbro's chief operating officer. Under the terms of the deal, Hasbro will partner exclusively with Universal Pictures for feature films, with the exception of Transformers, which became the centerpiece of the 2007 smash hit movie directed by Michael Bay and has already spawned a sequel, and G.I. Joe, which is currently filming under the direction of Steven Sommers. The first movie from this deal will be released in 2010 or 2011, and Universal will release at least one film a year thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of funny things I want to point out about that press release. I like how it says, when it's talking about the Transformers franchise, it says the centerpiece of the 2007 smash hit movie directed by Michael Bay. It's already spawned a sequel. They don't want to talk too much about Revenge of the Fallen.
They're already trying to hide it.
Yeah. But also there, you start to, as you're reading that, and you're thinking of this, placing it in time, then it says, and G.I. Joe, which is currently filming under the direction of Steven Sommers, and already like the dents in the armor are starting to show, because we all know how that one turns out. Now that is a movie that, is financially successful enough to get a sequel, and by most regards, I think a lot of people like the sequel more.
Right.
But still, I don't think anybody's too, bananas about either of them. So really, Transformers is really the only kind of Hasbro property that really takes off in the movies. This Universal deal gets going, and it just so happens that when they sign this deal, director Peter Berg is kind of itching to make a big blockbuster summer film.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just directed. Well, we should talk about Peter Berg. He's starts off as an actor and eventually gets into directing with Very Bad Things in 1998, which is an okay little dark twisted comedy. Then he does 2003's The Rundown, which I'm going to go on record as saying I think is still The Rock's best movie.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about The Rundown, but I think it's awesome. I thought it was like such a good, like kind of big action star debut for him that I don't think he's ever quite like lived up to.
Yeah, that was a good one. And he also got to play off of Sean William Scott in that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not the biggest Sean William Scott fan. In moderation, he's okay. I have friends who are like really into him. I liked him in that. He is a good foil for The Rock.
Yeah, definitely.
Walken's a good bad guy.
Yeah.
And then Berg follows that with some critical acclaim by going in 2004 making Friday Night Lights, which is an excellent movie about football, high school football in small, Texas towns. 2007 he does The Kingdom, which I don't know, is kind of like a forgotten movie, nothing to write home about. But in 2008 he does Hancock. Hancock we'll talk about on the show someday.
Yeah.
Doesn't start a franchise, but is a big hit. So I think probably because I don't know if it was just he wanted to kind of revisit the success of Hancock, or maybe he just felt that that's the way his career was going. Maybe he felt like, okay, my skills are to the point where I just did this kind of subversive superhero film. Now it's time for me to do something even bigger. Mm-hmm. But he has this notion of he's like, okay, now I want to make this big naval battle movie. And he just notices in the trades that this deal just happened with Universal.
Just in the funny papers, he was just like, oh, look at that.
Yeah. And in this article, so I'm getting a lot of this information. I want to give credit where credit's due. There's an old article from April of 2012 from The Guardian, written by Alex Godfrey, and I'm pulling a lot from that. Mm-hmm. But it talks about how at that time, it says Goldner says he was already in talks with Universal to adapt Battleship, and that Berg turning up was fortuitous. So Berg already was itching to make a super movie, and he flat out says he wanted to make a big, expensive Michael Bay affair. And then it was Berg who actually came with the idea and to just tie it into the game. He says, I thought that could be a way to get one of these films made. I felt I could find a compelling story around naval combat that wasn't completely bankrupt and void of character, and I was at the right place at the right time because Hasbro had just struck up the deal with Universal. So this is a real Todd Phillips Joker kind of thing,
Totally.
Where Todd Phillips wanted to make his own homage to Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, and he basically has admitted, he's like, nobody was making those kind of movies nowadays. The only way I could get that done
is if I said, well, it's about a comic book character. And so he
Yeah.
just kind of, put the Joker paint on it and made Joker. And this is the same thing. Peter Berg wanted to make a big naval, sci-fi action film. And he's like, well, they want to do a Battleship movie. And it just kind of worked out.
Yeah.
The thing about it, what's interesting reading this article is everybody is very aware of what this was. This was not, and I guess you could, in a cynical area, you could say that's where the problems start to form here, because there's no kind of talk about how, like, yes, we were trying to make a creative, breakthrough here. So it says, I'm trying to get to more quotes here. Oh yeah, this is Berg talking. There's no doubt we live in a time where studios are controlled by giant corporations, says Berg. And then it points out, indeed, Universal is today owned by General Electric, America's sixth biggest firm and its 14th most profitable. Berg goes on to say, these corporations are run by business people, not by artists. The day of Charlie Chaplin starting United Artists is a different era. Businessmen think like businessmen. They think about cross-promotion. They think about marketing. They think about brand awareness. They think about things filmmakers don't generally think about. These big films, the Pirates of the Caribbeans, the Iron Mans, are being made because the brand gives the money guys on top a lot of security. And if that makes somebody feel comfortable, I have no problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
So he's basically saying, like, look, I get it. Like, they just want to make money. They have this brand name that they think will, bring in an audience. That's fine by me. I thought that's kind of admirable for him to be that honest.
Yeah. It is nice to hear a filmmaker finally just lay it out all like that. Just, yeah, sometimes we do this for the money.
I mean, to his credit, though, he does go on to say that he actually kind of had fun trying to solve that creative issue of coming in and saying, okay, well, I want to make this, we're going to call it Battleship. And he says it was kind of fun working with Hasbro to figure out how to, he says, I had fun coming up with clever ways of referencing the game, but they were not dictating anything. So he does say they weren't exactly, hanging over his, his shoulder, making sure he was putting in like D4, B3. He didn't have to do that kind of stuff. They just wanted like the spirit of the game to be in there. And Goldner even talks in the article about how it was never important to him that the game be like all over the trailer or anything. He said he's like, it's fine if it's just kind of in the background. And in fact, if you go back to it, I would like invite people to go back and look at the trailers for Battleship or to go look at the early posters. It's not like it says based on the game.
No,
they're not making a big deal of it. They're just using the title. And in fact, there's really nothing about the story of the film that does seem to indicate the game, except for the little nods they do make, which we'll talk about when we talk about the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see how that could be maybe a fun challenge. And in fact, maybe you and I we were kind of inspired by that, and we'll get to that later. But I can see that being a fun challenge of saying, how can we take this movie and, make it Battleship?
Right.
Now, not everybody in Hollywood is happy about the idea. Some people clearly see it for the cynical move it is. And in fact, many of them speak up, including mega successful director James Cameron.
Yeah, little known director James Cameron, the king of the billionaire box office, kind of had a dig at the movie right away. He was talking to a German website, I think, and he said, now they want to make the Battleship game into a movie. This is pure desperation. Everyone in Hollywood knows how important it is that a film is a brand before it hits theaters, and there lies the problem. Because, unfortunately, these franchises are becoming more ridiculous. Battleship. This degrades cinema. And it was funny because, like, it actually, obviously that got to Peter Berg, right?
Yeah.
And his response was actually pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
So here he goes on to say that, I don't know, James Cameron's on top of the world. He says whatever he wants. At first glance, okay, Battleship, what the fuck? It's easy to say that. I personally never felt it. I don't know what was bugging Jim at that moment, but I don't think what he said is relevant, fair, or accurate. The idea that these films aren't creatively challenging or somehow represent the end of creativity in Hollywood, this isn't true. Making a film like this or Pirates of the Caribbean, there's nothing to go from. You got to kind of use your own imagination. In my opinion, they represent more of a creative challenge, other than, adapting a book or something. So when they work, it's kind of a real accomplishment.
Yeah, so and again, I like that.
Yeah. Kind of building the movie around the brand is kind of, that's kind of fun.
I keep saying I like that. All I'm kind of acknowledging is that I like that Berg knew what this was going in. Mm-hmm. I mean, I kind of agree. Like, I'm kind of falling in the middle of these two guys. I get what Cameron is saying, and in fact, in the years since, we've only seen this get worse and worse.
Yeah.
And just this notion of taking like any IP and saying, well, let's make this into a big blockbuster. it's a little ridiculous. And you and I have talked a lot, both on this podcast and in the regular conversations we have with our other friends and between the two of us about, just how the cinema's basically dying.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And stuff like this is a big part of the reason why. And I'm not going to deny that. This idea of like, let's just sink over $200 million into a movie because people like to play Battleship when they were kids. It's ridiculous. That said, if it's gonna happen, I hope it's made by filmmakers like Berg who say, yeah, you know what, that is stupid, but I'm still gonna try and have fun figuring out how you take that formula and actually make it work.
Right.
There's a worse way to go about it. And I guess we can talk more about him later. I wouldn't call myself a Peter Berg fan necessarily. I have kind of mixed feelings on Peter Berg. But I liked everything I read from him in regards to this. Now, in terms of Taylor Kitsch being in this film, that definitely makes sense because Peter Berg, as we said, was the director of Friday Night Lights and goes on to be the executive producer of the TV show Friday Night Lights,
right?
Which is where Taylor Kitsch comes to be. That's where his fame comes from. He plays Riggins on the show, great character, and it's exactly the performance in that show which has a lot of people raising their eyes and saying, this guy might be the next big thing. So I don't really know the timeline on this. I wouldn't be surprised if he was attached to this before John Carter. I'm not too sure about that. But it ultimately works out that they both come out the same year. And the one thing I'll say about this one is, again, even though they don't really sell this as like, based on the Hasbro game or anything, they don't necessarily sell it on Taylor Kitsch either.
No.
Taylor Kitsch, he really is all over the trailer for John Carter. It definitely looks like something that is designed to be a star vehicle. That's not really the case with this one. This one is really trying to just sell on a big action spectacle.
Yeah.
I think they were just assumed everyone will come see it because people like these Transformers movies right now, and this looks like more of that. Do you remember, let's actually get two questions here. Let's backtrack just a bit and talk about the game Battleship.
Yeah.
Let's get this in. What's your history with Battleship the game? Like, the reason I ask is, were you such a huge Battleship fan when you were a kid that you were like, man, I hope someday they make was little Chris like, I hope someday they make a movie out of this game?
No, never. So I recently mentioned on the Wild Wild West podcast or Wild Wild West episode, the Wild Wild West podcast. Could you imagine if we had a podcast just designated to that movie? No, but I mentioned that one held
6 years. We're trying to figure out new things to talk about Wild Wild West.
Yeah, I mentioned in that one that I had a soft spot for that movie because of my grandpa. And that kind of goes the same way with just board games in general. We had regular board game nights. Me and him, we're a big fan of especially the old stuff, like old board games. You would be very familiar with that because, the time frame of your life. But Battleship was definitely one of the main choices to play. I don't know if you are familiar with this either. There was a Star Wars Battleship. Obviously, there's a Star Wars fucking everything. This one was electronic. Do you remember that one?
I don't remember that. The electronic Battleship is certainly the version I had as a kid. In fact, it's probably still in the basement of my mom's house. Okay. I don't remember ever having regular Battleship. I certainly remember playing regular Battleship. In fact, I have a memory. Do you remember like Travel Battleship, which was like the even tinier version that you could like take in a car? And they're just like
to take on your horse and buggy.
Yeah, it sucked though because like if the horses got out of control, all the pegs went everywhere.
I actually don't remember the Travel one, no.
Yeah, I mean, there was travel versions of everything, right? But it was just a smaller version. I think I have memories of playing that and probably playing the regular version at friends' houses. But my household had the electronic Battleship version, but not a branded one to any other IP. But that doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah, but that one was sweet though because you had obviously it was all it was the old trilogy at this point, it had all the lines from the movie and like you would get to a certain part and the guy would be like, stay on target, and like all this other stuff. So it's like pretty fun. But yeah, Battleship was a fun board game to me. I don't know. I'm not just like, oh my god, man, I never shipped Battleship all the time.
It's a fun game. Did you ever play Battle Shots with people where you set up like a Battleship board but put shot glasses on it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
that's the PG-13 version.
Good times. So the second question I wanted to ask then is thinking back to, because I told about how I only saw this because of my free press screening.
Right.
Do you remember what your general attitude was about Battleship? Because I know this was your first time watching it. So this is not a film you saw. So what was did you just avoid this because you didn't care? Was it just not on your radar? Get it? How did you feel about it?
I never pegged this one.
Nice.
Thank you. Welcome. No, just not something I was particularly interested in. I saw the trailers and I thought I was definitely in the camp of scoffing at it, at like how silly that was. And then also being the big Transformers fan, I was like, oh, this just looks like Transformers, but even dumber.
See, that's where I'm surprised, because I'm surprised to hear you say it wasn't like something you were interested in, because I feel like you are the target audience for this movie.
Yes, I am very okay. And this, I mean, I don't want to get into it until we do our, when we really talk about the film. But yeah, I was a little surprised as well, for many reasons. This seems like it was built for me, but maybe back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess before we start talking about it, we should just finally mention the thing that I'm not even sure we've made this clear yet, but anyone listening who has never seen the movie and just wanted to hear, they're like, well, I love Trev and Chris, I listen to them talk about anything. What's this Battleship thing? Okay, so you're probably thinking, well, how do you make a movie out of this game? Peter Berg said it was an interesting creative challenge. We all know the Battleship game it's as simple as you set up your ships on a board, your buddy sets up theirs on their board, and then you try to hit each other's ships. So what is the Battleship movie? Because I remember thinking when they announced that, thinking, wow, couldn't like any naval movie just be called Battleship the movie? Like what is that? There's no storyline to the game. Oddly enough, this movie is not the story of one battleship trying to sink another. This is the story of a battleship versus aliens. So this is an alien invasion film with a naval battle against an incoming alien force. Quite the interesting call on that. That was never a part of the game. Once the movie came out, they did do a tie-in version of the Hasbro game that was, more based on the movie, where one board is alien ships and the other board is the naval ships. But yeah, interesting choice. And that's Battleship. So I guess we can just finally roll into it. 2012's Battleship from Peter Berg.
You ready for this?
I'm going to walk up to him, look him right in the eyes.
What are you gonna say?
Your daughter is the best thing that has happened to me in my entire life. It would be an honor to have your permission to marry her.
What is wrong with you?
You went from enlisted to an officer faster than anyone in the history of the United States Navy.
But I have never, ever seen a man waste himself better than you. What my daughter sees in you is a great mystery to me. Enjoy these naval exercises, Hopper. They're likely to be your last.
What the heck is that? Got an unknown surface contact.
Bridge, T.O., I've got nothing on the scope.
Let's get a team in the RIP to investigate this thing.
Hopper, you're on it.
Copy, sir.
Sir, my radar's totally dead.
Prepare to fire.
Sir, which weapons?
All of them.
Lieutenant Alex Hopper is a weapons officer aboard the destroyer USS John Paul Jones, while his older brother, Stone, is the commanding officer of the USS Samson. Unknown to Alex, Stone, or the rest of the U.S. Navy, alien invaders have arrived on Earth with plans to steal Earth's resources. When a confrontation with the invaders knocks out the Navy's radar capability, American and Japanese forces must work together to find a way to save the planet.
Nice.
Sometimes I add a little bit more into the intros and like to give it a little bit more descriptors, but I didn't know if it was really necessary.
No, this movie is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Can I read you from? So we're going to talk about how we feel about the movie now.
Sure.
As I mentioned, I saw this at a press screening, which I did write a review of this for that website back in 2012. Can I read you a little bit of my review?
Oh, please.
All right, I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously, but I just wanted to kind of get to some of my points here. Now, keep in mind, this movie came out in 2012. That's important to know for how I start this thing. Say, one thing is for sure. This movie is not as god-awful as you might expect from some of the trailers, or the fact that it's freaking Battleship. In fact, if you catch me in a particularly charitable mood, I might even say it's the best movie of the summer. Oh, but to be clear, I'm talking about the summer of 2005. I should have mentioned that. Battleship is the best summer movie of 2005. And I go on to say, you know what this is like? You know when directors like Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez try to make cheesy B movies today that look and feel exactly like they were actually made in the 70s? Battleship sort of feels like director Peter Berg is doing one of those based on the summer blockbusters of the modern era. Except he's not waiting some 30-odd years for these things to become a nostalgic charm. He's just making his tribute movie now, damn it. This is a film built almost entirely out of the story cliches and visual beats of other popular summer blockbusters. That the alien ships look like Transformers is the most obvious offense, but we've also got the standard rebellious hero, the comic relief nerdy scientist on hand to explain the alien's plot, the hero's girlfriend all too conveniently ending right up in the middle of the action at a crucial moment, the mid-movie death of an important character to galvanize our other heroes, etc. All your favorite summer blockbuster bits wrapped up and presented here in one shiny greatest hits package. All right, so I say all that, and then I fully acknowledge that everything about like the making of this film is fairly cynical and represents a lot of what I hate about Hollywood.
Yeah.
And then I'll say I kind of like this movie, and in fact it's a movie that's kind of grown on me even more over time since I initially wrote this review, to where I've revisited a couple times, and I find myself kind of liking it a little bit more each time. I'm a Battleship defender. I'm not going to go to bat for it hardcore in any way, but there's something about this movie that I think is I mean I'll talk more about it. I do want to hear your thoughts, but yeah, I kind of like this.
I think we might have another differing episode here, because I, like you said before, this movie seems like it's made for me, right? Mm-hmm. And you're right, if it came out in maybe 2005, yeah, this would be my new Transformers. But in a weird way, because Transformers came out already, and by the time I've seen this one, I've seen now Transformers at its heights and its lowest lows. This thing is just, I don't know, I felt like Peter Berg, and I don't really, honestly, Peter Berg is kind of a blind spot for me. I've never seen Friday Night Lights. I know I have to. I've never even seen the movie. I know I should. All I know is he's like the Entourage guy. You know, like that's all I really know of him. But this really does feel like Peter Berg is doing Michael Bay poorly. I am a Michael Bay defender, and I know you are to a point, but there's something about his films that, you know, it's his movie. You know a Michael Bay movie in 2 seconds, for better or for worse. But he shoots action in his way. He edits in his way. Everything looks like, again, it looks like a Bay film. This movie starts, and I was like, oh my god, this is Transformers. Like, this is just Transformers 1 again. And like the coloring, the reflections, his hot girlfriend in the beginning, everybody's like super tanned. And I know it's like in Hawaii, so like whatever. But I don't know, man. I was like, can I just jump to Taylor Kitsch?
Yeah.
Okay, I think he sucks in this. I don't like his character at all. And maybe I'm going in it with baggage from Transformers and Shia LaBeouf, but it really felt like Taylor Kitsch is doing Shia, but so bad because he doesn't have that goofball persona. Taylor Swift, I almost said. Now
imagine the same movie but with Taylor Swift in the lead role.
Okay, I would like that one. But I felt like Taylor Kitsch was just like trying to do Shia, and he can't. He doesn't have that goofball persona. He doesn't have it. He comes off as kind of like an asshole bro that like those kind of guys that I just can't stand. You know, like obviously they want to do the character arc if he learns something by the end and, you know, all that bullshit. But I just feel like he's just such an asshole that I just like don't care about him at all. Like he picks a fight with people for no reason. Like there's nothing likable about him. I really when you talked about John Carter, like John Carter, he did not deserve that, you know, from that. Like he wasn't the problem there. But I think he's like not good in this at all. He's mischaracterized. He's playing it wrong. He can't do that charm that like Shia. Again, that's the benchmark here is that I'm using is Shia LaBeouf in Transformers 1.
I'm glad you're using such a likable human being like Shia LaBeouf to use the.
Right. Like I'm talking about 2007's Shia LaBeouf.
This is a definitely disagreement for us because then you're gonna think this next statement's probably pretty crazy.
Okay,
but I think there's an argument to be made that Taylor Kitsch might be better in this than he is in John Carter at times. So what I mean by that is I do look at this and think, okay, like John Carter, this is another performance that indicates to me a guy who actually was ready to be put in these lead roles, but was just picking like the kind of the wrong projects. I would say he's better consistently in John Carter. But where I actually disagree with you is that I only think he's bad in this once the movie turns his character into generic action man. And that's a really hard thing for any actor to do. There are certain actors who just have this kind of natural charisma that, you know, that is the Dwayne Johnsons, the Jason Statham, where you can give them nothing and they still kind of pull something out of it and you end up liking them on screen. And then there are other actors who can't do that. And I think Taylor Kitsch proves in this that that's not his wheelhouse. When he's just supposed to be barking orders and be like the ultimate badass naval captain taking on these aliens, yeah, it doesn't work very well. But where I disagree with you is that I actually find him quite charming, funny, and even likable in like the first half hour or so of this, when it's kind of a more comedic, you know, based performance. And I remember watching this and just thinking, ooh, this is where Hollywood screwed up. I think we just found his actual wheelhouse and they didn't notice it. Because you and I talked in the John Carter episode too about how the moments of humor in that movie are kind of when he really shines.
Sure.
And I think like he comes across like, I agree that his character is kind of played douchey, but I don't think he's played douchey in a really negative way. I do find him kind of endearing, and I definitely want to talk about the chicken burrito sequence. But yeah, I think he's funny and likable, and I just think like, oh, he should have gone into doing more parts like this. He should have done more comedy. And I think Hollywood instead, because he's this handsome guy and everything, like they just saw him as generic, you know, movie star. And I would have liked to see him go into you know, if we're making like the Michael Bay kind of connection,
yeah,
I'd rather see Taylor Kitsch in a Pain and Gain than in a Transformers based on the first half hour of this movie versus the rest of it.
I could slightly agree with that. Yeah. Slightly. Only slightly. I don't know. I couldn't get on his
Well, and then the thing I'll say to your
I was about to say wavelength.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
The thing I'll say to your, you know, the Michael Bay comparison, which it's impossible to watch this movie and not and like I said, Berg was very upfront about how he wanted to make something like a Michael Bay movie. Mm-hmm. I will say, as I walked out of the theater when I initially saw it, and this is going to kill your soul, Chris, I apologize, but I'm not the one who said it. The people walking in front of me said, wow, that was like a good Michael Bay movie. And like you, I wouldn't necessarily agree with the overall sentiment of that, but I think I get what they mean. And I said this in my review. I said, this feels like a Bay movie, but Berg stages his action in a much more visually coherent manner. All the spectacle, less of the what the hell am I looking at factor. And I think there's something to that, especially that this was coming right in the wake of Transformers 2, which was like a fucking assault on the eyeballs, you know?
Hi, this is Siri. I'm quickly jumping in here on behalf of Trev. He stupidly forgot his thesis on the movie when Chris kept comparing it to Transformers, and this was due to Trev's unprofessionalism and total lack of preparation. So here are his words on the movie coming from my voice. While the action scenes may not be as dynamic as Transformers, it's still a version of that movie without all the racist and sexist humor, pointless characters, 1,000 subplots, etc. We joked about how there's not much to say about the plot, and then I was going to ask you to quickly and easily describe what happens in the later Transformers movies. My ultimate feeling on Battleship is that there's something charming about how single-minded and simple it is, especially since in the years since, blockbusters have only gotten more bloated and overstuffed. and I think that's why I like it. Are you happy now, Trev? Amazing level of analysis. Now back to the show.
We've talked about how whenever Michael Bay makes a movie in 3D, it actually makes the action a little bit better because he can't kind of go crazy with his editing. I honestly don't even remember if this film was in 3D, but whether it was or not, I mean, Berg just has a more kind of visually coherent eye than Bay. So I know that you're going to say, well, the action's not as big and bombastic, and you're right. But at least the action is like understandable in this film.
And I always push back on that, even like, okay, yeah, Revenge of the Fallen sucks. Okay, Transformers 2 sucks. Transformers 3 doesn't suck though. And this came out right after Transformers 3. So I don't know. I just don't get that sentiment.
Well, let me read you the rest of my paragraph, Chris.
Oh, here we go.
No, you're going to be happy now.
Okay.
Because that's what, okay, I'm going to backtrack, and I already said some of this, but just to give the whole story now.
Sure.
Say, this certainly feels like a Bay movie, but Berg stages his big action in a much more visually coherent manner. All the spectacle, less of the what the hell am I looking at factor. But, even though there are some impressive sequences, they still usually have an unavoidable been there, seen that feel to them. Mm-hmm. And, coherent or not, there is not a single action scene in this movie that is anywhere near as engaging or exciting as the collapsing skyscraper bit in last summer's Transformers 3.
Yep.
At this point, you kind of expect every big summer movie to try to show you something new, not just present you with an adequately done version of the same old stuff. Mm-hmm. So that is a detriment to the film. And I think the other detriment to the film, I'll get my kind of complaints out of the way, and then I can kind of talk more about what I like and why I will defend this film.
Okay.
Is my biggest issue with this film, and I'm not one of those guys who poo-poos every movie when it's long. I think it really bothers me that you still have people like, oh, 2.5 hours? Why are movies 2.5 hours? There are tons of great movies over 2 hours. But it takes a movie that knows what it's doing. This is one where I really wish this movie was about 15 or 20 minutes shorter. And in particular, that really needs to come out of the middle of this film. Mm-hmm. The middle of this film gets pretty interminable, where it's just a series of battles with these ships. And I know it's called Battleship, but it's just fight scene after fight scene with them taking on these aliens, and they're so repetitive, and you really do get exhausted in the middle a little bit.
They're repetitive, but also I'm a stickler for rules, okay? And hear me out. I'm a stickler for rules in movies. When you set the rules, you better stick with them, or else you're losing me immediately. Because I don't like to rewrite movies, but I do like to say, wait a second, why didn't this just happen? Because we already know this from the context of what's going on. There's so many moments in the action that I'm just like, why didn't they do this from the start? Or why are they still doing this? Just blow all the ships up. And I understand the movie would not exist. But that's my point, is if you can't commit to the rules, your movie can't be made, which means you got to go back to the whiteboard and you have to figure it out. I was about to say we famously, but I was like, oh, we're not fucking famous. I didn't know if you knew that, but me and you have argued, and I've argued a few times with the movie Us by Jordan Peele. Mm-hmm. That movie, I was very, very, very excited for. Extremely excited for. And I would probably put that at one of the bottom of my movies of that year, because the movie sets up a premise that is unfilmable. It doesn't work. So every time they backtrack on the rules, the movie is done. It's over. It's unfilmable. You can't go back. So in this movie, there's so many weapons that are brought up. This alien technology is brought up at all points throughout the entire film, especially in the middle. And all I'm thinking is, why the fuck are they still fighting? Just fucking take over. Like, there's a, which I will say, okay, I'll say something positive right now. There is a really cool weapon that I loved, and I think it was like super cool, and it is like this like razor ball, that the aliens shoot, like, so the aliens shoot this like, well, that's exactly what it is. It's a fucking razor ball. and it's obviously robotic, and it kind of has a mind of its own or whatever. But these razor balls are so devastating to the battleships that why not just toss those motherfuckers out the entire time?
Well, I mean, I hear you. I do think it's funny to hear you talk about how important these rules and how this kind of logic is when you were just raving about, a franchise like Transformers.
No, well, no, don't you dare try to turn my words against me, because I will talk about that. We will get into that if we want to. But in that movie, there's still the good, the bad. I understand what's happening here, and they're not bringing out weapons that. They're not bringing out these weapons that could just devastate a city. Then just fucking do that then.
Well, I have 2 points to make to that. So the first thing is, the reason I brought up the Transformers comparison is
Sure.
I think...
Sure.
I mean, obviously you like Transformers way more than this. And there's at least a couple Transformers movies I like more than this. I definitely like Battleship more than probably the bulk of the Transformers series.
That's fair.
But I would say that unlike you, who you think like Transformers are like... You told me once that they're the greatest work of art humanity's ever created, I think.
Only second to Schindler's List.
to me, like the level that I have to turn off my brain to enjoy Transformers is just how I also look at Battleship. It's the same kind of it's the same kind of idea to me, where I look at Battleship, as I said, it really feels like Peter Berg wants to make one of these big dumb kind of Independence Day movies, and he's just like, oh, I'm 10 years too late. Whatever, I'm still going to make it now, and I'm going to kind of trade in a lot of these cliches, and I'm just going to make like my version of it. And in a little bit, I'll talk about the things that I think are kind of unique to what he did, and like, the things that I think do stand out. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I think this is just kind of one of those, you watched, like, I'm not going to build like a Friday night around watching this and be like, that was a great use of my time.
Sure.
But like a lazy Sunday afternoon, just fun summer kind of blockbuster film on, this totally scratches that itch for me.
And that's fair, but you don't throw $200 million behind that type of film.
Well, no, we're having two discussions now.
Okay.
I'm talking about like why I like the movie. When we get to like the end, or I'll just say it now, did this movie deserve to fail, and do I understand why it failed? Yeah. This is not one where I'm like, oh my God, I'm so mad we're not getting Battleship 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
No, first of all, I don't want to see any sequels to this because there's nowhere for the story to go.
Yeah.
But also to get back to your notion of, these weapons, why aren't they using all these weapons? I will give the movie a little bit of credit here. And I don't know if it's something you even kind of picked up on. I think there's something slightly interesting about the fact that the aliens that are presented to us in this film, there are many sequences where they kind of go out of their way not to kill humans.
Mm-hmm.
Like we see that they, like, if you present no threat to them, they basically won't even engage in combat.
Which you're wrong though. You're wrong though, because they do. They still do that. This is my point, is that yes, I loved that idea of, yes, they scan a human being or they scan the ship, and if the weapons are turned away, they're like, okay, well, there's no threat. But they still send a razor ball to destroy highways.
But look where they send the razor ball. Yeah, they're sending the razor ball to take out like strategic assets that would be used to move stuff into place or whatever. Like it's Battleship, right? This is where we're getting into like the kind of strategic elements that they're trying to bring in.
Sure.
But if they end up in a room with you and you have no weapons and you're not going to put up a fight, they won't do anything. And I'm just kind of getting to the point where the movie does insinuate that this isn't the aliens we're encountering in this film. And this is where we get to we talk about why were they trying to make this into a franchise? What's the setup for sequels?
Mm-hmm.
The force in this film are not even supposed to be the invading force.
Right.
This is like the exploratory force, right? Who's coming here to see what's up with this planet. Like we're basically told that. This is like the initial first wave. That's just kind of, they're like scientists or something here to see what's going on. And then we kind of attack them, we really do start it because they just happen to land during this rim pack thing where all our naval ships are in the water. And so it's kind of like this whole war now, like it's almost like just a coincidence that it turns out to be this like big battle. I think that's interesting. I'm not saying the movie is smart enough to know entirely what to do with that, but at least it's there a little bit.
Sure, yeah. The scientists show up with devastating weaponry that can annihilate the whole planet.
Well, but I mean, like, okay, so I'm saying like they maybe scientist wasn't the right word. Of course, I know.
Yeah. I don't know. Like it's just frustrating when movies do this. Is when they introduce things. It just I don't get it, and it's not one person in the boardroom was like, "Hey, I like this idea. This is a cool idea," but it world breaks everything. And I know we're talking about a movie called Battleship. Like I'm not naive to that, but the movie itself takes itself seriously, and yes, it can be goofy and stuff, but then there's quite a bit of I mean, can we bring it up all the veteran stuff?
Well, I definitely want to get to that because to me that's like let's hold off on that.
Okay, we'll hold off.
Yeah,
but I just feel like it's not nearly silly enough, and it's not nearly, I don't know. It's just it's. This is honestly, I probably sound like a lot of people when they watch Transformers. I really do, and I get that, but.
And ultimately, let me be clear. Like, I'm coming in on this film of saying like this to me is like a strong B minus.
Right.
But for a film that I think most people treated like an F when it came out, that's where I kind of get my hackles up a little bit. And I say, you know what, this movie's kind of fun with the right attitude. I'm even of two minds with something you just said, because I agree with you that the movie should be a little goofier.
Yeah.
But I don't think it takes itself entirely seriously, and I do think it's at its best when it does play goofy. So, for instance, like Jesse Plemons' character, I think is pretty funny in this, and I think like he's used in the right way of just this kind of, you know, not a complex character by any means, just there for comic relief.
Sir, if I could just have a minute. Just give me 1 second.
Why am I staring at a lizard?
Because this is my pet lizard, sir, Penelope the Third. And they have the exact same eyes.
You have 15 seconds, go.
Okay, sir, I put the helmet on, and the helmet is just basically extreme sunglasses. So, I mean, it's just some hydration and some oxygen saturation, a bunch of other stuff I don't understand. But we took Penelope to the beach one time, which was a terrible idea. She went absolutely crazy because she can't handle the sunlight. You see, and I don't think that they can handle the sunlight either.
You try anything else on?
Negative, sir. Just the helmet.
But he does make me kind of chuckle every time he comes on screen with his he's played as kind of like, you know, the dumb naval guy. I even like the interplay between Taylor Kitsch and Tadanobu Asano as his Japanese rival. I think there's some decent comedy there.
I can't believe that worked. Yeah, art of war. Fight the enemy where they are. After all these years, it finally just clicked.
But that's not what it means.
Really?
Not even close.
I also really like Tadanobu Asano as an actor, and I think it's just really cool that he's in this. I don't know if you're very familiar with him. Like in the early 2000s, this is when, you know, when the DVD boom started. It's when the people, like, if you went to like comic conventions and stuff, there's always those bootleg tables that would sell all the cool like Hong Kong and Japanese and Asian action and sci-fi cinema, right? Mm-hmm. And I got like really into all these like crazy, you know, Asian films at that time. And then you also had directors like Tarantino and Eli Roth kind of talking up various like filmmakers of that era. And Takashi Miike, the great Japanese director, started to kind of break out over here even. And have you heard of a film called Ichi the Killer?
I've heard of it, yeah. I've never seen it.
Yeah. So Tadanobu Asano is the villain in that film. And it's this like incredible performance. And that got me into him, and I tracked down like other films he did. And he basically had this reputation of, all right, I'm going to bring up another problematic person, because since you were kind of gushing about Shia LaBeouf, let's travel to a time before we knew about all of Johnny Depp's foibles. But Tadanobu Asano was kind of like marketed like the Japanese version of Johnny Depp. This like really cool, you know, good-looking guy, but who's purposely picking very strange character pieces to perform in.
Okay.
So films like Ichi the Killer, Sharkskin Man, and Peach Hip Girl. You know, he's just like Survive Style 5 is a movie I love with him. So I was really excited to see him get like the secondary role in this. And it's kind of funny because he doesn't do much, but if you go look at like the Japanese posters for this, they obviously put him like front and center or on equal billing with Taylor Kitsch. And that's where one of those Hollywood things realize like, oh, that's why he's in this, you know?
Right.
So that they can sell this in Japan with him as well. But yeah, I like the two of them together. And okay, let's talk about the chicken burrito scene.
Okay.
So this is hard for me to put into words, but this whole sequence. So people know when the movie starts in the year 2005. And that's where we learned that NASA has just recently learned about how there's this planet that might be like, you know, it has conditions similar to Earth, and they decide to send a signal to it. And we later learn that signal is what ends up leading these aliens back to us. Meanwhile, while this signal is being sent out, we're catching these two brothers. Taylor Kitsch plays Alex Hopper, and Alexander Skarsgård plays his older brother, Stone Hopper, which, by the way, that's a hell of a movie name, Stone Hopper.
Great name.
Stone's already in the Navy, and Alex is like the perpetual screw-up. Right? And we see them at the bar celebrating Alex's birthday. And Stone is telling him, look, you got to get your life together. You know, you can't just keep, you know, being a burnout. And Brooklyn Decker walks in. And Taylor Kitsch is just immediately taken with Brooklyn Decker, of course.
Mm-hmm.
She asks the bartender for a chicken burrito. He says the kitchen's closed while turning off the microwave. I think that's a little funny bit. And Taylor Kitsch kind of comes over and hits on her, and she says, "Look, I don't want to be hit on tonight. I'm not interested. I just wanted to get a chicken burrito." And Taylor Kitsch tells the bartender, "Come on, give her a chicken burrito." And the guy's like, "No, sorry, it's done. We're closed." And Taylor Kitsch basically makes this deal with her. Says, "If I can get you a chicken burrito in the next few minutes, will you give me your name?" Because she won't even tell him her name. And she says, "Sure." So he rushes across the street to a convenience store, gets there just as they're closing. Can't get in. He's even telling the lady, "Come on, I can see the burrito. I can see it right there." She's like, "Sorry, it's closed." So what does he do? Of course, naturally, what do you do in this situation? You break into the convenience store. And not only that, but you break into the convenience store while the theme music to the Pink Panther plays.
Oh, God.
And as you break in, everything goes wrong. You fall through the ceiling in pure Looney Tunes fashion. You break everything in the store. You set off an alarm. You come running outside. The hot girl you're trying to get the burrito to is now waiting for you. You are running across the street with the burrito up in the air. The police show up. They tase you. And you still try and reach out and get her that burrito. Now, people are listening to this thinking, why is he talking about this scene this much? This scene goes on for a long time.
Oh, yes.
And what I love about that is this is what I like. I wish there was more sequences like this in this movie, and I wish there was more sequences like this in most action movies, because this is where, when you said you don't find him endearing at all, this is the sequence where I kind of give this character a lot of credit for the rest of the movie. Because this is like just a good, funny, like, why is this happening? And why is this happening in a movie called Battleship? And I remember seeing this movie in the theater like that initial time. And when the Pink Panther music came on, I remember having that thought of thinking, wow, I know I'm here to watch a movie about battleships fighting aliens, but I'm spending like 8 minutes watching a guy breaking into a convenience store with the Pink Panther music playing to get a chicken burrito. This is great. Like, this is a good sense of humor. Now, yes, I admit that the movie doesn't keep up that energy, but I just wanted to highlight that moment of saying, man, they were onto something there. And it's too bad that the aliens show up. It's too bad when the aliens show up that the movie does have to kind of default into that generic action space for so long.
And I will agree with you here.
Yeah.
I really liked the beginning of this movie. I really liked Taylor Kitsch and Alexander Skarsgård. I thought they were perfect brothers. Like, there's this moment when they're in the bar, and, you know, like you said, he's distracted looking at Brooklyn Decker. He's like, you know, like, how do I look or whatever? And Alexander Skarsgård like slaps him in the face. and I loved it. I thought that was so great. It was so perfect. Like, I have a brother, and it just felt like they just nailed that, like, ball breaking chemistry. And then, like, Brooklyn Decker is stunning. Like, she's pretty good to look at, so it makes sense. And I called it the burrito heist.
It almost makes you wish the movie was just called The Burrito Heist. And like, what if there was a version of this movie where it was a 90-minute movie about the rest of his night where he's trying to get a burrito for this girl? Actually, that would be better for sure. I'm not going to deny that. But
and that's what I was saying before, about it needed to be goofier. I keep bringing up Transformers a lot, but there's Sam Witwicky, the character in that movie, is goofy, and he makes mistakes, and he falls down, and he's, you know, when he chases after Michaela in the first movie when he, you know, slams the hood down, and he kind of veers off out of frame, and he comes back and he's screaming. You know what I mean? Like, it's very endearing to that type of hero, I guess. So yeah, it got me hook, line and sinker.
Nice.
In the beginning.
5 points.
Yeah, thank you. 1 point for style. But yeah, it just, I don't know. I think it's Hopper's likable there, but then, like you said, in the middle of the movie, this is where I can't really get back on board with him. Like you said, you can kind of like forgive him because of the beginning and that sort of thing. So we're just talking spoilers, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah, what the fuck? I was like, for all those, they're just
spoiler alert! Spoiler: we beat the aliens.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, it flash forwards, and Taylor Kitsch is in the Navy now, and the aliens are attacking or whatever, and then his brother Alexander Skarsgård gets blowed up. Okay, and his whole ship gets exploded. And
I will say, but I don't know if this is what you're about to say, but really quick, I will say this is the worst moment of Taylor Kitsch's performance in the film because he does not react at all.
Not at all. Not at all. I don't even know if I think this was a shot from maybe like everybody went to craft service to go get food. But yeah, his brother was just exploded. So Taylor Kitsch is now like Tom. What's his name? Tom Hopper? Tom Hopper? No, that's a director, right?
Yeah.
Oh
Tom
God,
Hooper.
Tom Hooper.
Alex Hopper and Stone Hopper.
Yes, Alex and Stone. Alex is now promoted to captain of the ship because his brother's dead. Mm-hmm. And what does Alex Hopper do? He says, "Fucking go straight ahead and ram these fucking aliens." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." He's gonna take the ship full of Navy guys and just go ram a ship that isn't even really in the water. It's floating.
Yeah, but
he's a ship.
See, I'm surprised you're criticizing this because to me, this part makes I don't know. This to me is kind of standard but good kind of movie stuff. Like he wants revenge. His brother was just murdered.
Sure, but
then the whole point is eventually they tell him wait, they stop him. They say we got to save the people that are drowning because meanwhile the aliens have blown up the Japanese ship.
Right.
And so they talk him out of it. And it is that we're watching a movie about a guy who is impulsive. He's a screw up, right? Although it's funny because he's one of those Hollywood screw ups where it's made quite clear in the beginning that he's an idiot and he shows up late to everything and he wears sunglasses when he shouldn't at official ceremonies, but he can also quote Homer, right? So it's well, he's super smart though. But yeah, we're watching that standard Hollywood thing of we're watching him become a better soldier, right? Once responsibility is foisted on him, he rises to the challenge.
I guess he doesn't ram the entire battleship into the fucking robot alien. And I guess
in
we should
fact, he
applaud him
comes
for that.
up with the plan at the end that ends up winning the day.
Yeah, a hard left turn. And that to me too is okay, you introduce aliens, okay? For aliens to get here, they must be pretty smart, right? And you see their technology and you see everything, incorporated with that. And so Trev just mentioned the finale of the movie and how they one up on the aliens. And basically, Hopper realizes that, okay, if we don't face the guns at them, they're not going to shoot at us. So we'll face the guns to the side. And then we're going to go straight towards them. And then we're going to make a hard turn by dropping an anchor. And then, surprise them with some guns and shoot them, right? Now, we just spent 2 hours watching these battleships fight. And the aliens know that these stupid fucking ships have guns and cannons and have shot them all to hell throughout, a day or two. The aliens don't think. They're not just blow them up. Just blow them up. This ship turns left. It turns left.
I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm trying to think how many. I think I've seen this. I've seen this film 3 or 4 times.
Oh, I hate you.
And I know every time I've watched it at that moment, I always have the same thought, which is this is not as clever. This is not as clever of a plan as the movie thinks it is.
No.
The logic of it doesn't really hold up, but it does look pretty cool when they drop the anchor and the ship swings around and blasts it. And that's the thing about this movie, right? That's what I mean. It's to me, this is a movie where, and I fully admit, and this is just true of some movies where the coolness of it trumps all right, that doesn't really hold up. It doesn't make sense. And I think it's a fun idea for a finale. The idea of dropping the anchor and making a hard. I'm sure it's not even. I'm sure that's also physically not possible.
No, it's not.
I have a feeling the ship would just crack in half if you tried that. But whatever, it's cool looking,
No, and I agree. It was cool looking, but just the aliens shoot the boat. Just shoot the boat. What do you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
and also to get the one up on the aliens too. Early in the movie, they obviously crash to Earth, but one crashes in China. And they're like, oh, it's not even on the periodic table, the metal or whatever the fuck. It's it's not even, who knows what this is? It's we don't even know what it is. So obviously the aliens and their technology is far superior than anything that is on Earth, right? How does Taylor Kitsch get the one up on them? They shoot a bullet through the window. So a human bullet goes towards the alien window, and I guess the alien window is same as here? Because, come on, Trev. Come on.
Hey, man.
Come on, man.
I'm not here to say Battleship is a smart movie. And I'm not here to say Battleship is a great movie. I'm here to say Battleship is a fun movie.
Is a movie.
It's certainly a movie. It has a beginning. It has an ending.
And like, I don't want to. Okay, I know the kind of movie that we're watching, but it just drives me crazy when you don't have to have the scene in China saying, "Guys, we don't know what the fuck this is made out of," you know, for then to bite you in the ass later on.
Well, that's what there are numerous, and I alluded to this earlier. There are numerous points in this film where you feel like, and I don't know if it's Peter Berg trying to make his like version of one of these big blockbusters, or it is the studio coming in saying, these are the kind of scenes you have to have in this movie. So we get those initial scenes too of like the ships initially coming down and like destroying cities, and we get the little boy like turning his face to the camera in slow motion as a building blows up behind him. And it's just like, oh, you're just giving us all this stuff that we've seen before, and it's like it's a checklist, right? They're going down. We should talk about, you were talking about like the goofiness of the film. I will say like a couple moments where I think the goofiness comes through, like I don't even know if it's unintentional, but when they do have to like make this a Battleship movie and reference the game, there are two big elements of that. So one is that, their radar is taken down early in the film. So they can't track the ships through radar. And Teruno Basano's character, the Japanese commander, he realizes that you can use the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration buoys that are all around the ocean near Hawaii to kind of create a grid to bounce a signal off of. And we actually see like they project the grid, and we see like the ships kind of where they're positioned in it. So that's an obvious Battleship reference, which I thought was like, okay, that's a clever way to bring the game up briefly, right? Like it's there for like anyone who's thinking, how are they going to make this like the game, just to take that second and go like, okay. The better one that to me is just hilarious, and we haven't even mentioned this yet, is the fact that the projectiles the aliens shoot at the battleships are in fact giant pegs that go into the ships and then blow them up, which I think is great.
So again, aliens from another world, another planet, have all the technology in the world. What do? They lob giant pegs onto ships.
That's great. Come on.
God. Oh, it's so stupid. They should have colored them red. They should have colored them red. Fuck it.
They should have. I mean, they should have. That was a mistake of the film.
Oh my God.
Look, Chris, if this movie is so stupid, how did they get Obama to be in it? Obama does make an appearance. That's not.
He does. Yeah, he does.
There's two big elements I still want to talk about, but I do just want to briefly mention, because it's in my notes and I don't want to forget I mentioned this. Alex Hopper, played by Taylor Kitsch, plays John Carter early in the year. Stone Hopper, played by Alexander Skarsgård, who goes on to play Tarzan. Two Edgar Rice Burroughs creations. What do you think of that?
We're going to talk about that Tarzan movie, right? Probably.
Yeah, we will.
Oh, okay. So those are my thoughts.
All right. Let's talk about what do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about the score first, or do you want to finally get to the veteran stuff?
Let's go with the veteran stuff.
Okay. Here's how I feel about the veterans thing.
Okay.
Because this to me is the part of the film that feels the most like where you see the simpatico nature of Peter Berg and Michael Bay, because these are clearly two directors who love the military and are like fetishistic in how much they incorporate the military into their films, right? We know that to be true of Michael Bay, and we see it here with Peter Berg. And in fact, since this film, Peter Berg has gone on to he like pretty much only makes movies with Mark Wahlberg now. It's and like they did like Lone Survivor and things like that. So he's very interested in kind of patriotism and everything. And that's why this is going to sound shitty, but that's why I kind of start to lose Peter Berg, because it's that kind of boring jingoistic filmmaking that takes over.
Sure.
But here, I think there's something really kind of, again, I'm going to use the word endearing about the way he uses veterans in this film. And like the ultimate example of that is the subplot of this film, which we haven't talked about. So we did mention Brooklyn Decker earlier. We try not to be super mean about actors on this podcast, I feel like. But I will say for Brooklyn Decker, there's a famous Joe Bob Briggs line that I like to use occasionally, and I'll apply it to her Brooklyn Decker is in this movie, but she acts like she isn't. I think that's a nice way to put it. But anyways, she does end up being his girlfriend, and none of that. She is the daughter of the admiral, played by Liam Neeson, who clearly did this movie because it meant 4 days in Hawaii.
Absolutely.
And probably was just happy he didn't have to fucking train and work out like he has for all the recent action films he's doing at this time, because he's just in a couple sequences. But anyways, so there's like a whole thing where he's going to ask Liam Neeson if he can have her hand in marriage, and that's like, you know, the storyline there. But what we learned about her is that she works with like wounded soldiers, veterans that have come back from battle as amputees or, you know, with horrible burns, and she helps them. You know, she's a rehab specialist. And one of the soldiers she's working with is a double amputee named Mick Canales. And she takes him out on a hike in Oahu. And they end up kind of encountering the scientist named Cal Zapata, who's played by Hamish Linklater, who's an actor I quite like. And I think he's got a good, like, nerdy, funny energy in this. Mm-hmm. But the three of them on this mountain, they end up being right at where the aliens are setting up their, like, communications array that they're going to use to beam a signal back to their planet. So we have, like, you know, the battle that's going on in the ocean, and then we have these three characters with no weapons or anything having to fight this alien ground team. The double amputee character is actually played by a real soldier who is a double amputee, Gregory D. Gadsden, who Peter Berg just... let me just read this really quick. Gregory D. Gadsden is an American actor, motivational speaker, and retired colonel in the United States Army, and a former commander of the U.S. Army Fort Belvoir Garrison. He is also a bilateral above-the-knee amputee. Trying to get to on the night of May 7th, 2007, while returning from a memorial service for two soldiers from his brigade, he lost both his legs and severely injured his right arm to a roadside bomb in Baghdad. He became one of the first military personnel to use a next-generation powered prosthetic knee with technology to make it possible for amputees to walk with confidence and with a more natural gait. So Peter Berg just saw like a little story about this guy in the news and said, I want to put him in my movie. Mm-hmm. And I will say, when you watch the movie, it's clear he never asked the second question, I wonder if that guy can act. Because he can't, right? No. But I can't shit on that, right?
No,
like,
you can't.
It's pretty cool that he lets this guy come in and be like an action hero. Mm-hmm. And then when Brooklyn Decker goes to her job, you know, the whole sequence we're walking in, it's filled with actual, you know, wounded soldiers. And then we get to the climax of the film, the third act thing, which you were alluding to earlier, which is that the ship, the actual like modern day battleships that the two Hopper brothers and the Japanese commander are on, all end up getting destroyed through the course of the middle of the film. And to put up their last fight against the aliens, they have to go to the USS Missouri, which is a decommissioned battleship, which is now just permanently docked in the Hawaii Harbor as a museum, a floating museum. And they go and kind of reactivate it. And they've also lost plenty of their, you know, crew. They're down to just like a few people left, a skeleton crew. And all the old veterans who kind of just work in the museum. They just work there as like taking care of the ship, keeping it, you know, clean, keeping it in order, and like basically leading tours. Mm-hmm. They step up and decide to become the crew again. And you get the whole little moment where Taylor Kitsch says to him, you know, the country's already asked so much of you. I really can't ask you to do more, but we do need your help if you're willing. And they all instantly say, yes, we will. Mm-hmm. And you cut to this like montage set to AC/DC of them like, you know, getting the ship back in order, breaking all the stuff that's just like museum crap, you know, lighting it back up. Is it hokey? Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Does it kind of work for me? Yeah. Like did you like that didn't get kind of cool to you? Like, and I remember like walking out of the theater again and like, I don't know who this person was, but like one of the other critics that was sitting next to me, we were talking about it and he was like, I bet that movie will play like gangbusters with the general audience. And he was like, and even in this theater, I could feel it. Like people thought that was kind of cool. Like to see, because you can tell these aren't actors. These are all actual old veterans who Peter Berg brought in. I don't know. I like it. I think it's neat. And I think it's kind of cool that he gave them this like spotlight. And there's something fun about just watching a bunch of old soldiers than like, you know, ordering around like the younger characters. And I like it.
Yeah, I'm of two minds. One, I think this maybe shows a little bit more deep-seated like cultural differences between you know, our lives. You know, I'm Canadian, you're American.
Yeah.
So the military stuff doesn't really play well up here.
Yeah, well,
it's
that's
not really
because and you know me, dude. I'm like a bleeding heart liberal.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying is like that's what's I think there's something there about the cinematic language of it. Then right, there's just something with the way Peter Berg is filming it where I don't know, it works. Like and to be fair, like when I say I'm a bleeding heart liberal, let me be clear. Like you know, it's that old cliche thing, right? Of like support the troops, just don't support the people who are sending them to die for no good reason.
Sure,
you know, and it is like I you know these soldiers who like you know lost limbs and came back wounded, obviously you feel for them, and for Berg to allow them to step up and give them like a heroic role, and also these like kind of old veterans, and I don't know, it's just kind of cool.
Oh yeah, no, again, the idea of it is very novel. You know, like I'm into it to a degree. I'm not, you know, rah about it, obviously.
Yeah.
But like you said, in the cinematic language of it all, it is. I mean, it was kind of goofy though. Like I wrote down, you know, of course they're on the museum boat, and Taylor Kitsch is like, "We need a crew," and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, all these old veterans are just kind of like standing around the ship in convenient places.
It's so funny. They just start appearing
out of nowhere.
I don't know. You could like take that and slightly re-edit it to insinuate that they're ghosts.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Like, oh my god, the ghosts of the old soldiers are fucking the crew now. And like, you know what? Again, that'd be a better movie. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah, Ghost Ship. Wasn't that a movie? That was one.
Yeah, it was.
I did picture when the AC/DC was playing for way too long. I think they play the entire song, by the way. The montage is going, and they're getting the ship back in order and everything. All I could picture was just like in the middle of the AC/DC montage is that like a hard cut, and like the ship just gets fucking exploded. Just completely annihilated.
Or after like all that, when they try to start up, it doesn't work, and they go, "Oh yeah, why do we think that was going to work?" You can't just start this ship back up
again, and then they get blown up again. Yeah, like I'm here for this sentiment of it all. It does. It's 1000% goofy, but it's hard to really shit on it because you know, like it's just like again that Gregory Gadson, he's very very poor actor. And
he's very wooden. Like,
I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, again, all the best, but it's bad. Like it's really bad. That it's kind of awkward.
Maybe that's why they cast Brooklyn Decker, because they're like, he won't seem so bad if he's acting against her.
You said it. I mean, I'm not going to say anything against the Queen, Brooklyn Decker. Just kidding. She was bad. Again,
I do like the moment
it's hard to. Sorry.
What? Yeah, that's the thing. That's a kind of a tricky thing too. Like Peter Berg probably knows no one can actually shit on this.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say I do think it's kind of funny when Hamish Linklater's character runs out and sees Gadson, and you know Gadson's got the two like steel like kind of bionic legs, and Linklater goes, "Oh my god, is he a cyborg?" I thought that was funny.
It was funny, but also super dumb because isn't this the scientist guy? So the smart one.
But he's a NASA scientist, not a medical scientist.
But alas, well, I'll say this to kind of wrap up the veteran talk is that like again it's an interesting and novel thing to do, but it's like, why are you doing it in the fucking alien invasion CGI $200 million movie? You know what I mean? It feels misplaced because the movie's so fucking stupid that now this just plays really, really weird.
I don't know. It's like, why do you put scenes like that? Like, why do you have like the, a big focus on like a Halo jump sequence in a Transformers film? These are just directors who are obsessed with the military and stick. I guess so, right? I do think ultimately though, this is a film about like, that's the weird thing is it's not the veterans that are like the odd man out in this. It's the alien part.
Yeah, totally.
This movie is called Battleship. Like the idea of bringing in veterans and having, this cool idea at the end of like, oh, what if you had to like recommission the USS Missouri, a traditional classic battleship, and like have the old crew take it. That makes sense for Battleship. The fact that they're fighting aliens is the weird part. Let's not lose sight of that. Like that's the strange thing here.
Yeah. And also a strange thing that like again nobody's like weirded out by it. That always drives me crazy. On like alien invasion movies, like your main heroes are just like, "Oh, aliens."
I guess one last. I do want to talk about the score, but there's one more performance we haven't talked about.
Oh yes, and that kind of led into it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. She was on the
It's-
boat.
And it's crazy that we haven't talked about it because it was one of the most publicized elements of this film when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that this film is the acting debut of Rihanna. What do you think of Rihanna in this?
Hold for dramatic effect. Can I just say one thing about her? Berg explained how he came up with the idea to cast her. He realized she could act after her appearance on Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Which is interesting because we talked about how there are comedic characters in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
She's not one of them.
Nope.
In fact, I think to call her a character is charitable. There is this is one of the first things I ever told Chris about this movie when I said we should do Battleship. Is shortly after this film came out, there was an article on Business Insider called "Here is every single line Rihanna utters in Battleship." Chris, if you'll give me a moment, I just want to share with our audience every line of dialogue from Rihanna in this film. And I understand this one, this is out of context. You haven't seen the film, but I'm just going to roll through it all. What's wrong with you, drama queen? Get up, princess. Come on. Typical. Shut up. Shut up. Oh, this is going to be sweet. He hates the man. You go mess with him and see what happens. Chicken. Kentucky Fried Chicken. You look like Colonel Sanders, actually. Yo, Saunders, ever been in a department run by some kind of Donald Trump, Mike Tyson mutant combo? Nothing, sir. If you did, it was only in reference to the fact that you both project great physical intensity, sir. I got something, sir, on my camera. I don't know. Is this some kind of exercise? You ever seen anything like this? Weird, man. Real bad idea, Lieutenant. Lieutenant, get up. Lieutenant. Come on, you with me? Come on, squared away. What the hell is that? Ah! Ah! What happened? What? Who's in charge? Fire control's offline. I need 3 minutes. No, sir. Nothing, sir. Nothing. Yo, hey. Come on, come on, come on. Mahalo, mother. What the hell is that? Sir? Roger Echo 1-1. Box 24 ready to fire. India 3-7 locked. Sir, we're hot over here. We're good to go. Let's light 'em up. Tango 1-9 loaded. Whiskey 2-5. Negative, sir. It's moving all over the place. I can't get a line on it. Sucker's really jumping around. 40 minutes, sir. Contact is 7 minutes out and closing fast. Contact 2 miles out. Contact ETA 21 seconds. Boom. Yeah. Get up. Let's go. Go, go, go. Yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. Awesome. Sir will be in weapons range in 5 minutes. Aimed at target. Sir, that's the wrong direction. Sir. Coordinates. Elevation. Come on, take the picture, beast. Navy. Come on, Hopper. Look dapper.
I think my favorite was Navy.
So
that may have been a better and more dramatic retelling.
Now, as you listen to all that, you might be thinking to yourself, that's interesting, because that seems like just a lot of barking out naval terms and no character stuff. That is because I left out one particular part of dialogue. There was one line I left out, and let's listen to that now. It is the only moment in the film which would come anywhere close to what I would call a character moment for Rihanna.
My dad said they'd come. Said it my whole life. He said one day we'd find them, or they'd find us. You know what else he said? He said, I hope I ain't around when that day comes.
So yeah, that brief moment right there where she, gives her little "my dad said they'd come" speech is really the only character bit for her, and everything else is just completely reactive. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me that, so I don't know, you can't say she's bad in this. Like, how do you rate this kind of performance? She's clearly just there to stand there and be Rihanna, right? Like that was like it's one of those Hollywood things of, people know who she is. We can put her name on the poster. We can make a big deal about how this is her first movie, but it's just so lazy. Like it's kind of, and it's odd to me that the reaction to her in this, I don't know if you remember this, Chris, but there was like talk after this that apparently Universal was like impressed with her in this, and there was talk about her being like the villain in the next Fast and the Furious film, which I don't think ever happened, right? Like I kind of lost track of that series, but she never ended up in there, right? And in fact, I just I don't know. What do you think?
We recently discussed with our friends the stunt casting in Hollywood, and this is textbook definition of that. You're talking about that with the Fast and Furious stuff. I never heard that, and that sounds like just bullshit. You know what I mean? Like this movie was doing bad, and they're just like, oh yeah, Rihanna's good in it. Hey, everybody go see it. You know, and it's just maybe trying to get more eyes on it, but she's basically an extra.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just
strange
get an
too, 'cause,
extra. I don't know.
It's strange because I agree that it is stunt casting, but it's the weirdest stunt casting because
Mm-hmm.
typically when you do stunt casting, you at least put someone in a role that is somewhat indicative of their persona or where they really kind of stand out. And as you said, like this could be anybody. It doesn't need to be Rihanna. Like she doesn't get, I mean, I was going to say she doesn't get to do anything cool. They give her some moments where she's the one who like, fires the cannon and stuff, but like who cares? There's just nothing about her that sticks out. I mean, I don't want to sound like an idiot, and I agree with Peter Berg, but I do think she actually has been pretty funny on SNL. Like so I wish she had more to do in this, just so I could rate an actual performance, because I have basically nothing to say about her other than wow, that's kind of funny that she has nothing but like 3-word lines over and over. All right, let's wrap the talk of the movie up with an element that I think you're finally maybe going to be a little bit more on my side.
Okay.
Score horror time.
Love
Steve
it.
Jablonsky. This
Oh,
score
man.
rips, man. This score is awesome.
We are big Steve Jablonsky fans. This is a name that people do not know, and they should know. He, another one of those protege guys of Hans Zimmer, and he has a very distinct sound, and he does great stuff. Great work in this. Honestly, through all our conversation here, I might just underlay it with some music because it's great. It's I can't really pinpoint any like great theme or motif or like track or anything, but just in general, it fucking rocks. Like it's very, very good. And also I read isn't like Tom Morello the guitarist in a lot of this?
Yeah, so there's like one track in particular that Tom Morello is part, and that's like, it's the music that plays during your favorite scene, the drop anchor hard left part. That's a Tom Morello guitar riff, which is it works well with like the Jablonsky score. I'm a big fan of I do like Jablonsky. I'm a big fan of interesting sound design incorporated into scores. And there's a great thing in this. It was one of the things that I first took note of when I saw this, and it's why I love to listen to the score. And I only recently found out, I don't know if you read this as well, Chris, but there's like this particular sound that keeps dominating this score and plays all the time, especially once the aliens show up. And it's actually, here, I'll just read what Peter Berg states about it. Working with composers often is a really frustrating experience because you speak a different language and oftentimes they take 2 or 3 jobs at the same time. They're difficult and pretentious and they're tormented artists. I'm not going to name names, but most of them are. One guy who isn't is Hans Zimmer, who taught Steve Jablonsky. We had a couple meetings, he's talking about Jablonsky now, and I came up with this idea. The day I met with him, I had an MRI for my neck, and they made that really scary sound. I was like, I just had this MRI, and when I was in there, I was thinking about the aliens, and it was really scary. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. He went and recorded MRIs and made music out of MRIs, and that's the theme of the aliens in our film. He has no drama and just goes and gets it done. And I didn't know that's where that sound came from, but
Cool.
I love that kind of stuff when you find something cool like that and bring it in, and I just love that sound. Every time it plays, like it has this like cool chilling sound to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice touch that echoes throughout the film.
It's awesome. So, Score horse TM.
Yep, score horse. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I like the film, but yes, this film was bound to fail. It's not good enough to have deserved any better. I will admit that.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of settled into its place where I've seen a lot of kind of in the years since, I have seen a lot of talk of people saying like that's not that bad. It's actually kind of enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like the right reputation for this. I do feel bad for Taylor Kitsch. Like we said this before, it's just too bad that Hollywood tried to put so much on him in too big of a way too quickly. And I hate that he takes so much of the blame for it. It's interesting that like Peter Berg goes on to just like make like a bunch more movies, and Taylor Kitsch is like, what about me, guys?
Yeah.
But no, I don't want Battleship 2 or 3, nor could I
No.
even imagine what it would be. I do think it's funny at the end of this film, though, and this is something that's true in many alien invasion movies like this. Once they blow up the mothership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone just fucking starts celebrating. And we cut to a couple months later, and they're having this big ceremony where they're promoting Hopper. They're telling him he can become a Navy SEAL. They're giving him his brother's like posthumous, awards. And at no point does anyone say, I wonder if more of those aliens are going to show up.
Well, yeah, I kind of mentioned it before that nobody ever in these alien invasion movies just takes a look around and is like, guys, aliens just came here and they invaded us, and what the fuck, and the world's idea of religion and every culture is just out the fucking window now because, oh my god, we've been invaded. Nobody ever does that. They just move on and give each other medals and high fives.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, maybe that's what Battleship 2 and 3 would have investigated,
the cultural ramifications.
Yeah. What if like the second Battleship movie was primed to be like this like super drama about how much culture changed? Because I'm sure it wasn't at all going to be new Navy SEAL Alex Hopper fighting aliens in Scotland. No, so like my final say on this is I think it's a fun movie, but it's like a B- movie. It has a really bad reputation that I don't think it deserves. I think it knows what it is. I think it's a little boring in the middle, but I think it starts really fun and ends fun. I think if you go make a sandwich or something during the middle 15 minutes, watch it on a Sunday afternoon, you'll enjoy it. What's your final say on it?
Opens fine, ends fine. I've seen this movie many times now in other forms. It doesn't really do anything different. It looks nice. It sounds good. It definitely knows what it is. But I just felt like I've seen it at this point. Well, how many Transformers movies are there? 5, 6, 7? I've seen it 7 times, and one at least of those 7 was way, way better. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I don't know. I'm not like angry about it. First of all, I'm not like mad about it. It's not like when we did Wild Wild West and you were like you were offended by my moderate kind of enjoyment by it.
No, I will say though, like the part of me that's surprised, I will say, even though I enjoy the film, I do have to say that it's kind of a failing if you are lukewarm on it,
right?
Because this is a movie that I thought you were either going to hate, which I would have been kind of shocked by, or I really thought you might end up loving. The fact that you're like, whatever, means that it doesn't ultimately hit its mark. But hey, I'll still defend it. That said, it doesn't sound like either of us want or care about sequels. So instead, because sometimes we talk here about what would we do with sequels, I don't give a shit. I don't want to watch any more Battleship movies. That said, I thought it might be kind of fun if we gave ourselves the same challenge Peter Berg had. And instead of coming up with sequels to Battleship, I came to Chris and said, hey, what if we try to each pitch a movie based on a famous game? And to make it even a bit more fun, I assigned Chris a game and Chris assigned me one. So I told Chris, you have to pitch the big budget movie of the classic board game Sorry. Mm-hmm. And Chris, in turn, told me I have to pitch the movie version of Kerplunk. So who do you want? Do you want to go first, Chris, or how do you want to?
Sure, I'll go first. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Let's hear it. What's Sorry the movie gonna be?
All right. So like, should be an executive? Like light a cigar or something while I talk to you.
Oh yeah, no, I'm all yours, man. I got okay. You know what? I got money to burn, so I got a $200 million budget. Tell me what you got.
Oh, my budget is way more. Okay. All right. Picture this: the movie Sorry. Okay. Budget, I'm going to need $300 million, okay? Okay, but guess who signed on? James Cameron. He wants to do this film. He wants to do it. He told me he's excited to do it, and I'll get to the reasons why. Okay, so picture this. The year is unknown. The galaxy is unknown to the viewer. We live in a galaxy that's populated by 4 humanoid elemental planets, okay? One is a water planet. The blue planet, some might say. This is where our heroes are from. these are our protagonists. And we're gonna cast them? We're gonna cast them with social media stars, okay? Because that's where we are in 2020. We're getting social media stars, and they're gonna sell the shit out of this fucking movie, and you're gonna make that $300 million back. I'm telling you right now, okay? 2 people that want to be a part of it: Selena Gomez, Ariana Grande. Okay, you on board still?
I'm here. You got me.
Excellent. Okay, so second planet, the red planet, is a volcanic planet. Okay, now this is where our main antagonists are from. And once again, social media stars, okay? But because they're evil, Jake and Logan Paul of Suicide Forest and Instagram boxing fame are signed on, okay? They want to be a part of this, okay? Also, maybe Kylie Jenner and Ellen. Who knows? But they might be a part of the villain planet. Then there's 2 more planets, a forest planet, green, and a desert planet, yellow. So those are just kind of like the whatever planets, okay? Like, we don't really give a shit about them. We're not really going to spend a lot of time. They're going to be cannon fodder. It doesn't matter. Don't think about it. But reminder, we have 4 planets in this galaxy: water blue, volcanic red, forest green, desert yellow, okay? Now, every 50 years, each planetary government must send a team... Hold on, okay. Okay, let me just pick up from there.
Yep.
I might keep this in. Okay. Every 50 years, each planetary government must send a team of 4 young people to compete on the neutral moon of Hasbronia. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now think Hunger Games. Think Tron. Put your hands together. That's what we got. All right? Now, on Hasbronia, this is where we get the cliched team meetups, the fraternizing with each other, the high fives, the calling each other names. This is where we draw the lines of our heroes and our villains. We see our archetypes associated with each, who we love, who we hate, all that shit, all right? All that character stuff we don't really care about. Now, all 14, it's day one. It's day one. Actually, it's really only one day. But all 4 teams converge on the board, okay? That's like this list. It's like an arena, all right? And they're going to play a game called D-Soul. That's how our characters are going to pronounce this word, D-Soul. It's an ancient word, an ancient language, and that's how they pronounce it. D-Soul? What's D-Soul? We're going to get to that, okay? Get ready. All right. At the center of this board is the almighty power sword. For you listeners who have kept up with us over the last few weeks and have listened back to our introductions episode, this is the origin of the power sword. We got it. The power sword is part of the canon of this movie. And it's floating in the air in a cylindrical beam of light, all right, in the middle of the game board. All right. Now, this is a real test between the planets, where they literally play as pawns on a giant floating board reminiscent of the game. Of course, we got to incorporate the game, right? Now, holograms are projected as the cards that tell people what to do. Like, tell me, 2 spaces up, 2 spaces back, or whatever the fuck they are. They're just holograms, but they're voiced by Rachel McAdams. All right? Again, important, and I'll tell you why later. And if they land on the same spot as someone, well, guess what? They fall to their deaths. This is real life or death shit. All right? So there's real consequences. There's no... Without sacrifice, what is it? No sacrifice, no victory?
Yep.
Sam was okay, good. No sacrifice, no victory. We might steal that. Now, it all crescendos with Logan Paul and Selena Gomez at the very end fighting to get the power sword. Selena obviously is going to get the power sword, and she's going to stab Logan Paul with it, and she's going to win, okay? Now this, Trev, is the hook. This is where we make history. This is where you get your money back. Selena grabs the sword, the power sword, and, it's fucking, the score kicks in. Steve Jablonski, obviously. And Selena is overcome with power. Lights, flash, bang, her eyes are glowing. We zoom into her brain, and she glimpses history. Earth's history. Dinosaurs, wars, famine, greed, Trump, COVID, Russia, nuclear war, all that shit. And suddenly, flash. Selena is now physically in the memory, in the history. She's confused. She looks around, and everything seems to be normal. People are walking around, friendly as fuck, waving, smiling. People are healthy and happy. Everyone's just so damn friendly. But they're all speaking some weird language. And then distracted Selena, of course she's not paying attention, she bumps into somebody, knocking them down. Now this person we're going to get, black, Asian, racially ambiguous, transgendered person, obviously. And they're wearing a Canadian flag shirt. That person looks at Selena from the ground and says, "Je suis désolé," which is "I'm sorry" in French. Désolé. Désolé. Selena's mind jumps back into her present body, holding the power sword, where now it's explained that all of Earth fucked itself while Canada minded their own business. And they felt really bad about it. So after the dust settled, they rebuilt, reorganized, and eventually, over hundreds of years, went to a new galaxy to form new civilizations. And they started this tradition to teach generations the importance of being humble and just saying sorry, even though it really wasn't their fault, and humanity was almost extinguished by everybody else. And basically, the world bumped into Canada, but Canada were the ones who apologized for it. That's why we got James Cameron, Canadian, Rachel McAdams, Canadian, and guess what? You're going to make fucking $2 billion. Okay? See ya, Avengers. Fuck you. And that is sorry.
Well, I'll tell you what I like about it.
Go, okay?
You said Tron and you said Hunger Games, and these are movies I know.
Okay.
So I like that.
Okay.
I do have notes.
Okay.
As a Hollywood executive, I'm gonna. First of all, I should tell you this. Thanks for the pitch, but this is Netflix, and to tell you the truth, you were greenlit the moment you walked into the office. You didn't even need to make that pitch.
Okay. All that work for nothing.
Yeah, that's an important note here. Could you change Canada into America? Thanks.
Oh. Anyway, that was
Chris,
fun.
I didn't even realize I swear to God, this did not even occur to me. I forgot that the added benefit of assigning you that game, which obviously I signed you just because I was like, how do you make a movie out of that?
Sure.
Was I forgot that I'd get to hear your adorable Canadian pronunciation of sorry.
You're welcome. And you're welcome, listeners. It's pronounced sorry.
All right, Kerplunk. You ready for Kerplunk?
Okay, yeah, let me get in the mood. Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna maybe do. Hold on. Okay, 1 second. Let me get ready. Let me get my boss face, my executive persona. All right, Trev, what do you got for me?
All right. I want you to picture this.
All right.
The year is 2037. Why? Because in true Hollywood fashion, I want to make this a future, but a future that'll happen pretty soon, and this movie will seem outdated. So the year is 2037. Construction has just been completed on the long-awaited Roosevelt-Churchill Bridge, which is a multi-level bridge stretching across the Atlantic from the U.S. East Coast all the way to England. So to commemorate the fact that this bridge was just completed, they're having a special event, a special ribbon-cutting ceremony, right in the middle of the bridge, right in the exact center of it in the Atlantic Ocean. One of the people attending this event is our hero, Hunt Turner, who is a former college football superstar turned star structural engineer. He got he was great. He was an amazing college football player, blew out his ACL, had to become a structural engineer, and is now the best structural engineer in the world. In fact, he's one of the people responsible for building this bridge. He knows all its secrets. I feel like we can, we got to get some kind of up and coming star ready for, the big time. I'd say something like a Stephen Amell, right? I'm sure the fact that he was on Arrow, that means all of America and all of the world is ready for him to be a gigantic movie star. Don't worry about that whole Turtles thing. We won't talk about that. So Stephen Amell is Hunt Turner, this star structural engineer at this ribbon cutting ceremony. He's there, of course, with his whole family. We'll give him a hot wife, give him a couple of precocious kids who make a bunch of funny jokes all throughout the film. And they're just celebrating. Everyone's on this bridge. It's going to revolutionize travel. Why, you might say? There are planes and boats. Don't worry about it. This is great. Trust me. Multi-level bridge. What they don't realize is they picked the absolute worst day to have this ribbon cutting ceremony. They couldn't have known that this is the day a massive asteroid strike will hit Earth. And oddly enough, it is centered right where this ribbon cutting ceremony is happening. Just coincidentally, asteroids keep striking the middle of this bridge. And even stranger is it's a special kind of asteroid strike, and this is explained to us by a hot young scientist. And again, here I feel we'll get like Lily Reinhart from Riverdale, right? Just like, and I don't know this character's name yet because it doesn't matter. It's just a hot scientist. And she's going to explain that the thing with this asteroid strike is new batches of asteroids come every 10 minutes. So there's an initial wave, and then you get 10 minutes of relief, and then another wave comes. The problem is, each time the asteroids strike, it takes out one of the levels. This ribbon-cutting ceremony, of course, is happening on the top level of this bridge. First level's wiped out. Millions dead. Not Hunt Turner and his family. They, of course, survive, but like all the other survivors, they fall down to the next level. Now they have 10 minutes to try and reinforce the level, see what they can do. But of course, doesn't matter. 10 minutes later, another strike. Figure a 2-hour movie, we're going to get plenty of strikes, plenty of chaos, plenty of action. Each time going down a level. Here's the problem, though. Here's the third act stakes. Because Hunt Turner is the structural engineer, and because he knows all the secrets of this bridge, only he is privy to the information that the bottom level, for some reason, we'll figure this out later. The bottom level houses this like huge storage facility full of all these different orbs. And these orbs all contain this experimental chemical. And if this chemical falls into the ocean, it's going to irradiate the entire ocean, killing all aquatic life, destroying the coasts, and basically making the Earth uninhabitable. So now it's a race against time to try and stop the asteroid strikes, try and reinforce each level, and make sure that final level doesn't break, sending these orbs into the ocean, which would be the worst kerplunk of them all. Director, I'm going to get Oliver Megaton, director of Transporter 2, Transporter 3, Taken 2, Taken 3, Columbiana. Why? Because when you're making kerplunk, you need a megaton.
Oh.
And that is my pitch for kerplunk, which I see as the summer hit of next year. Plenty of tie-ins. We can make a new version of kerplunk that like looks like the bridge. You know, we can make the marbles look like the orbs. We can slap Stephen Amell's face on the box. It's gonna be great.
Now I got some notes.
All right.
1, the hot scientist.
Yeah.
Can she wear a short skirt?
Oh, I thought that was a given. Sorry,
Okay,
I didn't. I should have made that clear.
I lost track of what you were saying when you mentioned hot scientist, and I got kerfuffled.
How do you feel about tight white tank tops?
Can they be tighter? And can they be in the water?
Oh, don't. Yeah, there's water aplenty. Trust me.
All right. Also, this is Disney, so can we get Boba Fett?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I can fit Boba Fett in there.
Okay, as long as we can get Boba Fett, and by at least the third act, like right in the beginning, around the 90-minute mark, you're hired.
Are there any? Since it's Disney, since it's Disney and we're already putting Boba Fett in, are there any like dead actors you want me to put in too? We can just digitize them in. I don't care.
Trev,
as long as you pay me, I'm good.
That's all of the extras are gonna be dead people.
Yeah,
all of them.
Humphrey Bogart, Peter Lorre,
Marilyn Monroe,
Cary Grant.
Who else?
Saddam Hussein.
Oh yeah, Osama bin Laden. You're hired. Here's your check. I'll see you in 9 months. You have to deliver this. That was fun.
I'd watch both those movies.
I would too. A double feature.
So who knows? Maybe those movies will happen. I'll tell you what didn't happen. The majority of that Hasbro Universal deal. Did you know that in the wake of the failure of Battleship, Universal had to buy their way out of that deal?
No shit.
Yeah, so they had a deal to make at least 4 of these Hasbro movies, and I don't know if you know this, Chris, but they got pretty close on some of them. They had Adam Sandler attached for the Candyland movie. There was a long process where Taylor Lautner was going to play Stretch Armstrong.
No.
And oddly enough, the one that came the closest to being made, and this is kind of funny considering, like all of James Cameron's poo-pooing about, the ultimate, like the cynicism of this and how it just seems like total commercial garbage,
Mm-hmm.
The one that came the closest was Ridley Scott was going to make a Monopoly movie.
I remember that one.
And yeah. But obviously after Battleship, they kind of balked and got really worried. The problem is they had this deal. And so the deal they struck with Hasbro, which was intended to last 6 years, but was now dead after only 4, according to this article I'm looking at, they had to pay a $5 million penalty for every film they tried to produce but didn't actually make. So rather than pay that fee, they just apparently they just decided to pay like an enormous multi-million-dollar penalty at one time to get out of the deal.
Jeez.
And just like kind of wash their hands of it. Now there was still one more that did get made, and it was Ouija. They kind of gave that off to Blumhouse, and that actually worked. You know, that one, not a great movie, but was profitable. Go on to make a much better sequel.
Yeah.
Thanks to Mike Flanagan. Yeah, great. Ouija 2 is awesome.
Yeah, I love that movie.
So that's like the out of this whole big thing that was announced with press releases and all this, like, oh, Hasbro and Universal coming together. The ultimate legacy of that is a couple Ouija movies.
Yeah. It is pretty incredible too, like just a couple Ouija movies, and like Transformers is now seemingly like in the shitter. Financially, obviously, creatively, maybe it was a while ago, but
well, I mean,
very diminishing returns.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but we'll talk about Bumblebee, I'm sure, someday. So I don't know if I agree with the creative thing, but I would say that like that's the ultimate problem with Battleship, right? Is that you can't look at Transformers and be like, oh, I guess we could take any property we own and make that. Guys, Transformers has a story and a mythology.
Yeah.
Battleship does not. Candyland does not. Sahari and Kerplunk do not. The fact that they didn't just try to like go right into like a Clue remake. I know there's some talk now about Ryan Reynolds doing a new version of Clue, which I'm very scared of because I love the original Clue movie and I don't really want to see his version. But I just think it's just funny that Hollywood is so obsessed with IP that they just think any IP can be made into a movie. And again, that hubris is why this show exists.
Yeah. I guess that's Battleship. I don't really have much more to say, but I guess if you enjoyed this, please follow us on. Oh, actually, no. First, what do we next time? We're reviewing something. What are we doing? Oh yeah, we're doing Spawn.
Spawn, man.
Yeah, Spawn. I'm very much looking forward to Spawn. I have not watched that since I was a kid, so been a long time.
Me too, by design.
When you were a kid, that was like what, 1938?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was seeing Buster Keaton movies. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But...
You were watching Spawn. You were watching like what are things spawned? Like the polio virus?
I would say the Earth was spawning when I was a kid.
You're back on Pangea.
I'll fucking beat you at your own game, buddy. Like coming at me with the old jokes.
That son of a bitch. All right, you won this round. Old timer.
And a little preview for our listeners. Who's in Spawn? A beloved actor by the name of John Leguizamo. Johnny Legs. So who knows? Maybe another secondary podcast will pop up again.
Yeah. See if we can book him.
Yeah. It's tough. He's a busy guy, even in COVID times.
Yeah. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff at F2FPod. That's 2, the number 2, FPod. Rate, review, whatever you do. That helps us out. That'd be cool if you could do that. And also join the tribe and hit that subscribe. If you like this, listen to other stuff. It's been fun. It's been really fun for me. I'm just speaking for myself. I like doing this.
Yeah.
So.
And you know what? Just because, even though I don't feel this way, now that we're here at the end, I'll just say, because you can't go an entire podcast without doing this. I wish I didn't like this movie. Like, I wish I hated it more, so I could legitimately say, Battleship, more like battle shit. Am I right? Come on. No? Nothing?
No,
Chris,
nothing.
You still there? What's going on?
All right. Thanks for listening.
See ya.